And UKIPs first ever MP, Douglas Carswell, is with me now. Welcome.
Hi.
Do you expect any more defections before Christmas or early in the new year?
I don't really expect any this side of Christmas, but who knows? I didn't make up my mind until, for certain, until about 3 weeks before I announced it. So let's wait and see. But what's important is what the voters do and trying to get the voters to make the switch. Frankly, who cares what 650 MPs now do?
What about John Barron? He's mentioned this morning, Tory MP.
You need to talk to John. I don't know anything
All
about
right.
that.
Won't potential defectors and perhaps in the longer run even voters be put off by your party's constant flip-flops on important matters of policy?
I don't think there have been flip-flops, Andrew.
Really?
I don't think there have. I think there have been a couple of occasions late in the campaign when Mark, under a great deal of pressure, very late in the day after a long campaign, answered a question rather clumsily, but there's absolute clarity on UKIP's policy.
Well, let's look at that one, because when Mark Reckless said that EU citizens could stay here during a transition period to a British exit until permanent arrangements were agreed, that was your party's policy.
No, that wasn't. That was simply wrong. He made a mistake at the end of a campaign. Let's be clear about
he says he was sore about it. He says he was sore about it. He said the policy changed on Wednesday, and I'm a bit sore about it.
UKIP's position is very straightforward. We want something very reasonable. We want to control our borders. What would be unreasonable is to put a question mark over the legitimate residency rights of people who've come here legitimately. I think what Mark said was that he was feeling sore. Yeah. Mark and I have gone from being 2 MPs in a party of 300 to being 2 MPs, UKIP's only 2 MPs. And if you're going to do that, yep, sometimes you've got to learn that it's not just what you say that counts, it's what people hear.
But he didn't say he misspoke. He said the policy changed on Wednesday, and I'm a bit sore about how that came out.
No, UKIP's policy has never, ever been...
So he's wrong.
UKIP's policy has never been to suggest that people who are here legitimately should leave. That's absolutely wrong. UKIP's policy is that we have control over our borders, and that is perfectly reasonable. What would be totally unreasonable is to question the legitimate right of people to live here. Let's
look at other flip-flops, as they would seem. Your economic spokesman, Patrick O'Flynn, he suggests it'd be a good idea to look at a higher VAT on luxury goods. Within hours, Nigel Farage had disowned that idea. No, is that any way to make policy?
I think Patrick O'Flynn floated that idea, but it's not UKIP's policy. It's right to make a suggestion, but it's not UKIP's policy.
But Mr Farage said we're not even going to look at it. It won't happen.
It's right that our team of spokesmen make suggestions and suggest ideas that might go in the manifesto. But like all the other parties, we have people who make suggestions and views, but what appears in the manifesto is something that we'll look at and work at and will be announced before the next general election.
And I'll come on to that in a minute, but it isn't just other members of the party that Mr Farage contradicts. He contradicts himself. Not that long ago he was saying we should move to an insurance-based health system. Now you're even more wedded to the traditional NHS model than Labour.
Can I just say something? I, as a Conservative backbench MP, once was up for the idea of changing the way we fund the NHS. But I changed my mind. I changed my mind as a Conservative because I realised that actually an insurance-based model would be much more expensive, and I'd be happy to take time out to explain why an insurance-based system wouldn't work.
I'm just wondering if this is the way to make policy.
It's not UKIP's policy. Several years ago, Nigel toyed with the idea, but it is not his view. It is not his settled opinion.
His view
it is not the view of UKIP.
I mean, doesn't your leader need to stop shooting from the lip when it comes to policy and consult more people like you?
Do you want to have party leaders who talk in that plastic parrot fashion and are unable to actually think about things? I think it's actually quite refreshing that Nigel Farage several years ago toyed with the idea. It's not UKIP policy, but you know, do you want party leaders who talk in cliches?
I think we would like politicians to have thought things through before they open their mouths.
You're quoting something he said several years ago. If I was to quote everything you had said several years ago, Andrew, we might be able to find 1 or 2 inconsistencies in that too.
Well, maybe, but I'll leave you to try and find that out. Who does make policy? Who determines policy in your party?
There's a national executive.
Are you on it?
No, I'm not. There is a national executive, and there is a process that they're going to put in place to draw up a manifesto. And it's really important that we don't just have policies that talk about European immigration. We will have policies in there that talk about public service reform. We address the fact that Britain today is run in the interests of vested interests, in the energy markets, in banking, in politics.
Okay.
We need real change, and the manifesto will offer proposals to that.
Will you and Mark Reckless have a say on party policy?
I will have some minor contribution, but I'm
just
one
a minor contribution?
I'm one of many people in UKIP.
How often do you speak to Nigel Farage?
almost every day.
So couldn't you have more of an input into policy?
But
I mean, you're the first MP. You've only got two.
I'm one of a party of 40,000. 6 months ago, we were 10,000 fewer members. We're growing. There are many people in UKIP. I'm just one of many voices.
But how you vote in Parliament, will that reflect party policy?
It won't define party policy. Obviously, it will be important. But you know, UKIP is more than just the Member of Parliament for Clacton and the Member of Parliament for Rochester. There is a good team we have of MEPs. We got 24 of them, and they have portfolios and briefs, and they will define policy on certain areas.
But you only have two MPs. We expect people, as they vote as MPs, to broadly reflect their party's policy.
And that
Are you saying you can just make it up as you go along?
No, you're going from one extreme, and you're flip-flopping. You're going from one extreme to the other, if I may say.
I still don't know who determines your policy in the end.
We have a national executive that puts in place a team that will write the manifesto, just like the Conservative
Who chose this
Party.
national executive?
They're elected by the members. Unlike the other parties, our party is not the private property of a small clique in London. We have a democratic process where we elect members of the national executive.
Will you sign off on the manifesto?
I'd certainly like to look at it, but it's not my job to sign off on it.
Look at it. You'll be fighting the election on it.
Will you sign off on it? I will contribute to it, and absolutely, if I'm going to stand as a UKIP candidate, of course I'm going to stand on UKIP's manifesto. Of course, that goes without saying.
Who's the leader of UKIP in Westminster?
Nigel Farage.
But he's not in Westminster.
No, he's the leader of UKIP. I'm a backbench MP. I am contributing to a team of people who've been fighting this good fight for 20-something years. And Nigel Farage, I speak to him very regularly. I work very closely with him. And I'm very happy to follow his lead.
So you don't have a leader in Westminster?
Nigel Farage is UKIP's leader in Westminster.
You have a leader who's not actually in Westminster. Well, he's actually in the European Parliament.
He's yet to be elected to Westminster, but you know, let's see what the world looks like in 5 months' time.
All right, we will indeed.
Thank you.
Douglas Carswell, thank you.